Hello and welcome to Chess with Simon. I'm Simon. You know, I've had a lifelong love affair with the Caro Kan Defence. What a beautiful idea. What we can play is c6 with a view to playing d5, defended by the c6 pawn. Now, isn't there... This is a so-called famous coffee house opening, right, where the idea is you play bishop b3 and then you gambit the e4 pawn. But my opponent hasn't done that. Now, this looks like a loss of time, and what's more, it looks like we can play e6 to slightly lock the bishop out. And before doing that, we'll put our queen's bishop onto a nice square. So this looks like a nice setup for us. We'll put our queen's bishop onto a nice square. Maybe we'll put our queen's bishop onto f5 to stop white's light square bishop coming round to c2 later on. We're going to put our king's bishop on d6. Well, maybe we'll pin the knight. Will we? Will we? Really? Will we pin the knight and play knight e4? I'm not sure this is the best move, but I'm doing it anyway. Nobody knows why. Takes, and because castle, takes, knight e4. What's the... Well, now you've made me do it. I mean, this isn't great, and it's not winning, but it just is going to annoy white, because I suppose white can actually play c4 here, and that's a decent move. That's the point. c4, what happens? Take it? It's a decent move. Yeah, that hasn't happened. So what we're going to do now is we're going to dissuade c4 in the future. I think I'm doing some rubbish stuff here, because look, bishop a4 check's a really good move, yeah. Now, am I going to admit my mistake and go knight c6, or am I going to go king e7 in a very proud way? I'm going to go king e7. It's awful, but I do have knight c4 on the end. It's just because I couldn't bear to admit my mistake. What about rook c8 as well? There's some good moves here. It's not as bad as it first seems, and it does seem bad. There's also like a6 and b5, which I think I need to play. There's a lot of decent moves here. This kind of looks rubbish, but it's also kind of not. a6 and b5 are surprisingly good. I mean, white's got knight e5. Knight c4, when it happens, will be a nice move. Even better with the bishop. Yeah, that's a good move. Okay, so there's no check on c6 because my knight's covering it, which is a relief. We're going to put our rook on c8 to cover c6. And this is cheeky, frankly. This whole enterprise has been cheeky. Now, this is no good anymore, is it? Because you don't get anything. What's white getting? Like, we just take with the pawn, and there's nothing, which is better. Because the knight on a5 is defended. Bishop's got to run. Good running. Now what? Well, we've got to get our king to safety. Well, our king's going to go to safety via f6. What? That was played very quickly, as if white knew what white was talking about. Better put the knight in the way. Is it? You can't put the queen in the way. So you better put the knight in the way. Do I care about knight d7? Don't think so. You know, this is amusing for all sorts of reasons, but it's amusing because... Okay. Okay, so the idea here is that white's winning exchange with knight c6. Now, I know I'm going to sound all confident, but I don't care. Well, I do care, but I don't know if it's that good. For instance, doesn't rook c8 win the bishop back? So I'm better. I think after knight c6 takes, bishop takes, rook c8 wins, the bishop's trapped, which is kind of amusing. You know, obviously, I saw all of this. Not. So, that's really boring for white and really nice for black. There's no bishop b7. You know, chess can be so nice when it goes right, and it's so annoying when it goes wrong. That's the thing about anything worth having, isn't it? Is when you haven't got it, it hurts. What do we take with? The queen or the pawn? Let's take with the queen and leave the cover. Leave cover for the king. And also a nice centralized queen. So it says I'm only a pawn up, but I feel really good about this position because I think I've got nice pieces. That's a nice knight. Really nice. How do you evict it? It's attacking the pawn on c3. How do you evict it? Only by f3, which is fine, but it's a weakening move. Bishop can also come to d3 at some point. Rook's going to come to b8. The pieces are just working. The king's fine. King's not threatened. Rook can go to b8 to b3 and then can attack the pawn on c3. I mean, I've taken liberties here, and the computer's not going to like this, but luckily the computer's not playing. So how do you defend? Rook c1, queen c1. Yeah. But now rook b3 is, I mean, well, I think it's virtually winning. I think rook b3 is virtually winning. I suppose there's queen. Okay, that's a good move. Well, it's a sensible move. It's not kind of game-changing, but it's a sensible move. But you got bishop on d3 is going to be awesome. The knight can make its way to e3 via f5. Rook can make its way to b3. There's such nice squares for these pieces. Okay, so this queen's activating, isn't it? Well, let's just put the pieces on good squares and assume that good things will happen. I mean, that rook's going to b3, but if white attacks with the queen, the rook could even go to b2. White's attacking with the queen. I don't mind taking the queens off, because I don't think it changes much. In fact, I think it's better for black, because defending the g7 pawn, which is already defended by the knight. It's better for black because white's only realistic chance is a sort of direct attack. Should we hide the king away ever so safely, where no one's going to bother it? Okay, I get all of this, but it's a strikeout, right? It's just an attempt. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's desperation, but it's because we've got nice defensive moves like, I mean, bishop g6 defends everything. The knight has the nice squares. You know, the squares for these minor pieces are just gorgeous. The knight has a square on d5. The queen could go to d5. And then from d5, the knight can hop to f4. the bishop can sit on g6 and everything's defended forever. I've been very influenced by watching Peter Lecco commentating on the kind of elite tournaments online. His enthusiasm for the game is so infectious, but also you learn a lot of good ideas. And, okay, so what's the threat here? The threat is to push the pawn. But when we push the pawn, the knight can go to f5. Still, there's going to be a bit of nonsense there. So to stop the pawn push, we're going to... Oh, no, we can't do that with the queen because rook takes. Oh, no, the rook doesn't take because the rook hangs on c1. Rook doesn't take on e6 because the rook hangs on c1. And also, we are threatening to take on f3. And also, we are threatening rook b2, queen d2. So, frankly, the weakness of e6, I'm not sure it leads anywhere anyway. You can always play things like knight g6. And anyway, in the meantime, rook b2, rook b2, queen d2 is a really potent threat. I mean, e6 is a long-term weakness, but I think white's got other things to worry about. Well, let's see what white's... If you were white, what would you play? If I was white here, what would I play? Queen g3? You got to defend f3. Not easy to defend. Queen... You can't play king g2 because of rook b2 check. Queen g3 I'd play, but it's sad. Well, that's a good move. It's a good move. So now you've got to think seriously about rook taking on e6. No, you haven't because the rook's still hanging on c1. So we'll just make a move. Threatening to take on a3. So that's a good defense of a3. Unfortunately, it drops c3. Now there is a take on e6. And the problem with that, though, is that we hit the queen. I mean, yes, I'm dropping the knight on e7, but it's a queen. Queen's got to move. We got a check. We got a really nice check on d4. Well, I suppose the queen could go to e3 and then queen h2 check is mate. This is looking like the end because the rook on a1's dropping. I think it's the end. Well, it's the end because black's attack is coordinated. It's an example of moving through the centre, right? The power of the centre. Okay, the rook can go in the way. Is there a pretty finish? Rook c1 is the boring finish. It just swaps off the rooks and leaves. Got to be a bit careful, haven't you? Rook c1, queen b8 check. King f7. No more checks. It's just a check. Okay. It's just a check. And the rook is never taking on e7. Yeah. Look at that bishop on d3. Cemento, as Peter Lecco would say. Cemento. Okay. Let's... Okay. Think. There's nothing to worry about here. Things are absolutely fine. What we like is we check here. Then if the king goes backwards, we just get the queens off. If the king goes forwards, it's a bit slower, but it can't be hard. What's the quickest way to win? Well, let's play this and threaten Queen e5 check. Or bishop attacking the f-pawn. The king's quite well shielded by the knight. Yeah, I mean, you can't cope with this. White playing on for an earthquake, as Malcolm Payne would say. Okay, let's win the outside pawn. Okay, so I'm going to win these pawns. I suspect at some point White will lose interest because White's a good player, and this is going to get boring. The king has to stay over there to stop the pawn going through, but these other pawns can go through. There's no stalemate. 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 Always got to check for stalemate. Got to keep it interesting. There is still no stalemate. Now, if you check every move, you're not going to get a stalemate. Check. Shall I put pressure on myself and find the checkmate? How about that? Thank you. Good game. I enjoyed that. Do we need to look at the analysis? Let's just do a game review. Let's just do a sort of general feel for what went right when. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Oh, something went wrong in the middle. Oh, basically, I was really cocky in the middle. So this was all good. This was all really nice. This is all fine. They liked all of this. Okay, we're still better. We're still better here. B5, not good. Okay, let's go analysis. I mean, B5 was sort of was just a matter of taste, really. F6, yeah, F6 is really good. Gives the king somewhere to hide, doesn't it? Rook C8, not good. Still likes F6. This is bad. Yeah, I knew this was bad. Oh, have to take on D2. I suppose if you take on D2, you avoid a bishop B4 check. Okay, so here there's a bishop B4 check. Knight in the way? Queen H5. No idea what's going on here. Knight G6, Bishop G6, Queen H4 check. I mean, okay, fine. Hard for humans to see all this stuff. F6, I assume. F6. Okay. Bishop A4. And you can't take the knight because it's pinned. Okay, well, that was a subtle sequence which I did miss. This was great. This was great. This was a blunder. Queen H5 again is what it wants. Okay. I get it. Yeah, and after this, it's all gone. And we could feel it was all gone, didn't we? It just felt like all of, the material's not that great. Well, the material, I think we were a pawn up in material terms. We've got 6 pawns versus 6. Maybe 2 pawns up. Depends how you measure it. I think a knight and a bishop are worth a rook and 2 pawns. But the squares for our pieces were just excellent. Just so many nice squares. Cemented bishop on D3. Yeah, these moves are coming easily. I'm sure well, let's see what happened. Can you believe this was the best move? Oh, it's not the best move, it's a miss. Oh, there's a mate in 2. Mate in 3. Hang on. Queen E1 check. Queen E1 check. Bishop f1 check. Oh, that's pretty. Okay, fair dues. We're always learning. And it's so hard as a human, which I am, because if you just see an endgame that's totally winning, you just say, oh, I'll play that. I've not got that much time. You just know you're going to win, so you do that. But, you know, as a chess purist, which I often am, you think you should find the best move. I hope you enjoyed that. I enjoyed that, and I'll see you soon.